There's a lightning storm. I'm trying to position the camera so you can view that. And don't mistake that for the cracks in the windshield. All right, we are live July 31st. July never freaking ends. Been over it. Air conditioning unit fail. And the manager sends out a notice. They're like, you can come by the office for a popsicle. It's like 100 degrees outside. What are you going to do with a popsicle? But anyway, it's almost over. So we finally have some rain. Here in New Mexico, I'm looking for a new headquarters. And as I said before, I'm combining it with art. I have this idea for doing a parallel channel where I just do a lot of, basically murals. I did a painting of Walter White, but I want to do a lot more conspiracy theory art, if that makes sense. Mind map. It doesn't have to be like necessarily too realistic. I'm willing to go abstract with it, but I like the idea of merging mind maps with an image that it represents. Now, if it weren't for that street light. What's up, Copaesthetic? Frank Mayer. So lately I've been revisiting the best arguments for atheism. And, I think people have emotional triggers that prevent them from looking into places. They're scared of the dark. And it's like, well, if you really believe something, then you should be able to confront the steel man of the opposite side, the best argument that they can present. Not some straw man, no evasions. And there's a reason for it. I think that there's been this Trojan horse inserted into our conversation when it comes to media analysis where, and it's not just, when I say atheism, I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking about religion in general. And I consider simulationism to be a religion. I consider the mainstream world stage Truman Show essentially to be a religion, a secular religion, this meta-scripted history. So when I say religion, I'm really just talking about worldviews. Self-contained, closed informational systems that have all the answers, so you don't need any answers from outside of it. And I think it helps to spend time in different cults, or if you've come out of one, maybe you were raised in one religion, you join another, and you lose the sense that everybody thinks the same. You start to see, okay, there's a diversity here. But a lot of people have never left that initial echo chamber. A lot of ethnocentrism, a lot of religious supremacy. And every religionist is a religion supremacist. You never hear one say with any humility, well, I don't know for sure. God never came to me directly, so maybe the Muslims have it. But in terms of keeping our conversations honest and precise, I decided that it no longer makes sense to speak about Christianity as a monolith because it's too diverse. It's not fair to the individuals, or it's not even accurate. So I lowercased it. And then it's not fair to attribute the characteristics of one particular religion's versions of God to any kind of divine event or supernatural event or even creation itself. Like whenever we say, quote, God, why does it have to go to that one particular God? Who made that decision? And the answer is nobody. It's been this default. So when somebody says, well, God does this, I'm like, wait, which God? I always say that. I say, which God? And they're always taken aback. Like, what do you mean? My God's the only God. Well, which one is it? Is it a personal God, or is it an abstract, philosophical, vague kind of God? Is it God of the gaps? Is it a modern version? I mean, it's very difficult to arrive at a conclusion. I mean, how many Jezi are there? Or Jesuses? What's the plural? Because you've got a different Jesus for every political faction. You think that the far right thinks that they have the same Jesus as the political left? No. So I'm just talking about now, I'm recognizing that when we say God, what people are really invoking is a God construct. generally created by the state. I mean, is there an exception to that? I don't know. Like, what I'm saying is that these God constructs I talk about all the time, like the nuke is a God construct. Gaia, a God construct. It's an angry one. But I think the old religions also have what are in fact simply man-made constructs, not literal deities. Lost Age says thought forms, egregore, tulpa, creation, business. Let me give you a wrench. I won't even give it that. Like, what I'm saying is that these are admitted, I think. If you can find examples. I talk about examples of how we live in the village and how that the elite have always realized that to rule over the masses, you have to program them to be scared of the gods that you can then invoke or appease. So you're tithing to the Church of Climate Change, so Gaia doesn't flood the place. You're expiating your guilt for your carbon emissions, which is a modern type of like sin or wickedness. But the reason why I'm talking about atheism here is that it's not about, because like most people who are atheists believe all the fake news. So remember, if someone says they're an atheist, but they buy all the modern God constructs that have replaced the previous ones, they're not atheists. Because there's a point where they're outsourcing their perception and taking a leap in faith in what you could consider to be a de facto priesthood. And then I would even argue that the whole space program constitutes a form of mythology about ascension into a modern iteration of heaven. But the reason why I'm talking about atheism is it's about the arguments. Because these are arguments that are in fact rooted in reason, logic, and in holding fast to the idea that we have an objective reality in which the facts matter and are testable. So we're trying to get I'm trying to get away from subjectivity. And what I realized is that we're facing weaponized subjectivity, where all beliefs are considered valid. Everybody has their own world, their own set of facts, and it doesn't matter. At least they don't think it matters, but the fact of it is, all of these various belief systems that are highly subjective all exist within the controlled paradigm. All these different religions don't threaten the dominant status quo religion of mass media. In fact, they distract you from it. So instead of focusing on media scripting, media fakery, how saturated we are with propaganda, people get distracted into, is this world even real? Are we in a simulation? And that kind of, I think, and then beyond that, people get into the religious interpretation of it. I mean, the QAnon movement really has become, or has been for some time, a cult, but it's essentially a religion. But there's religiosity in politics, especially when you get to the woke end of the spectrum, on the left and the right. It's pretty much religious. That's why so many far-right influencers are publicly becoming Christian, very performatively becoming religious all of a sudden, Catholic. This schism is entertaining, by the way, between the neocon right and the woke right. And even among the far fringe right, there's infighting like crazy. Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes at the moment are at it. And Candace Owens is, I don't know what this is. I mean, I hear what she says, and she can't possibly believe a lot of what she says because she's espousing the opinions of a white ethno-fascist Christian, and she kind of doesn't have that background. And then her husband, I don't believe that he makes sense of this equation very much. But I think she's an agent provocateur, is what I'm saying. And so I'm like, well, what are they feeding the masses? Because these agent provocateurs are propaganda conduits. They're put there to put certain ideas in the target demo. So I'm listening to what she's saying, and it almost looks like an orchestrated meltdown, much like they did with Alex Jones. And it could be perhaps tied into the disease X idea, that we're being given demonstrations of why we need regulation and censorship, why we need to shut down conspiracy theories. In fact, after that fake shooting the other day at the NFL headquarters at the Blackstone, I think the governor there called for a federal ban on assault rifles. Yeah, I'm here at Mordor. Right there at the edge of Mordor, there's actually a Whataburger. But beyond that, that's the entrance. Now, I got into this conversation because we were on Twitter, and I'm reading this thread about the shooter dying on the 33rd floor. You know, all kinds of clues that people are noticing. And someone in the comments said, oh, the 33 is because we're in a simulation. And I'm like, how'd you get to that? And the person argues that, well, I just don't think our perceptions are adequate to describe reality, that there's more to it. Like it was profound. And I'm like, you mean what every single religion says, what every belief system posits? Like there's nothing novel about that. Like why? But my question was, why are we looking at the news and what is clearly a psyop by all indicators, and then steering the conversation into metaphysical speculation? It's just pure misdirection. And this is a common thing with simulationists. Simulationism. So what I've been doing is I've been taking the arguments of atheism and applying it to simulation theory. And I've been finding that this reveals that you're dealing with something unfalsifiable. And I've also been making it a point to label unfalsifiable conspiracy theories as superstitions. And there are many superstitions. We're in a very superstitious age. We're not talking about werewolves and vampires. We're talking about media-introduced characters and situations and even events. Like things that might be based on real life, like the school shooter, for example, or the Islamic terrorist. These things are largely psyop creations, but they're reinforced. The media will reinforce the existence of these things. So even though they're fake, because it's reinforced, it becomes an actually, not really a superstition at that point, but a hyperstition. We live in a hyperstitious world. These are all augmentations. And what religions do, and what the mainstream media does, is they add on to your worldview. So you have what you sense, you have your experience, your education, your temperament, your personality. All these things give you your experience, your user experience of this place. But the religion adds on a bunch of shit that isn't there, that's not testable. So now you have to include this other set of rules and presuppositions. And that's exactly what media does. And so what we're doing here, when we're looking at fake news, is we're not saying, oh, fake news means we're in a simulation. Fake news means reality's fake. No, quite the opposite. We're saying this is evidence of tampering via propaganda with public perception. And by noticing the tampering, we are preventing our perception from being compromised. We remain objective. Meanwhile, the truthers who see media fuckery as evidence of simulation are now lost in a world of subjectivity and confused, where they don't understand something and their default is nothing is real. To me, that's like mind war casualty. That's a mind war casualty symptom. Just like when I see truthers who are totally triggered. Like if you're not triggered, you're not paying attention. That's why I call them the red pill woke. Like, oh, you're not mad about 5G towers? What's wrong with you? And my point has been, no, if you're not skeptical, you're not paying attention. And if you're triggered, you're not skeptical. You're reactive. You're responding to headlines. Lord Laney says, I don't know what to believe in the benevolent rulers trying to wake up the masses thing, but if they got them that ham-fisted, even the normies notice it. Here's the thing about that, is I do think it could be benevolent compared to alternatives. But I don't think there's any attempt to, quote, wake anybody up. And it may well be that some of the conspicuous indicators, I think it's there for internal communication, but it may also be limited hangout, where they know that only the people on the right side of the political spectrum in the conspiracy realm in Trutherville are going to notice. Because we think, yeah, everybody notices. No, only the people who are suspicious of media notice that. It's a subset. And that subset has been discredited in the eyes of the mainstream. And in the eyes of the mainstream, these things are just coincidences. So these coincidences are evidences more of engineered, manufactured news events. It has nothing to do with higher powers manipulating mankind. And that particular explanation has been artificially introduced into this area of discourse. That's why I question it. And that's why I'm just making it a point. What are the cognitive tools of the skeptic when it comes to news media? Fake until proven real. And so I want to eliminate the presupposition that we can insert a God of the gaps. I don't understand, so it could be God. I don't understand, so it could be simulation. No, instead we should, again, remain fixed from, in objective reality. The instant you take a leap, I think that's where they want you. Because a lot of truthers are known for being confused. Like, well, I don't know. We'll never know, or it's not knowable. My confusion means we're all confused. It's like, well, no, we're not confused here. Lost Age says, if we aren't in a simulation, does it even matter? Fake storms still drench us. Yeah, I think it's just I guess it's a thought experiment. It's completely implausible, and it's not even qualifying as a theory. The only reason it's brought up is because Elon Musk won't shut up about it. He popularized it. But it doesn't offer any sort of explanation. It's not testable. And the only reason that we even talk about it here is that people have taken stuff in the movies as evidence we're in a simulation. Stuff in the news. What we are examining to be propaganda placement. Predictive programming is not a conspiracy theory. It exists. But you have to demystify it. And people will say, well, you're just drawing from a large body of data. You can make anything fit. And that's pretty good. That's a good explanation from a uninformed perspective. But having looked at this closely for many, many years, what we have realized is that it's not only saturating us with target ideas, and we're not cherry picking because there's a direct correlation between these and news events, but more damning and conclusive is the real-time releases, as in synchronized releases of entertainment to correspond to incoming fake events. Keyword being fake. Now, this is the reason I think people went in the wrong direction, is their presupposition was these things were real. And so if the news media and the movies are somehow foreshadowing real things, well, that becomes mystical. Like, oh, there's some kind of magic here. Lower powers, revelation of the method, wizards, occultists. They arrive at this mystical answer. And so the reason why, again, just to bring up the atheist arguments, is that I want to demystify what we're doing. And so we need to keep any of these arguments that religionists use. And look, religion is separate from what we're doing, and we have to maintain that distinction. Like, I'm not here trying to elucidate media fakery because I have a religious agenda. No, quite the opposite. In fact, these days I tend to look at religion as old school fake news. And I'm not scared of anybody's God construct. So I'm not worried that I'm going to get struck by lightning right now for saying that, you know, God is a deep fake construct. And when I say God, whose God am I talking about? How do you know I'm talking about yours? That's a pattern. It's a habit where people just, there's this default. When we say God, we therefore mean this particular one. And again, that's not fair. That's like saying the media with no nuance. Well, I saw this on the media. Well, which media? Left, right, independent, skeptical, non-skeptical. Plain decoded says we're in a giant pyramid scam, like a regular MLM, like Amway. The bottom is the mind washed, and all the wealth siphons to the 1%. You can, yeah. So you feel like you can get there if you work hard. I have this manuscript, Lie World Order. I'm attaching it to Auto-Hoaxology before I release it in a few days. And I'm describing this as a pyramid scheme as well, where if you can conceptualize the world stage as a circle of land that's lit by a spotlight atop of the pyramid. So their designated version of reality, what its light shines on, anything outside of that spotlight doesn't exist. We're in the darkness, outside the perimeter that they shine their light on. Within that light, you've got mainstream and alternative. Alex Jones is in their spotlight. So he's not really censored, he's acknowledged. Our perspective is unacknowledged. The pyramid itself would consist of the programmers at various levels of initiation into the thing, different security clearances. So your average crisis actor isn't going to know the big picture. The higher up you go, the fewer people there are, and you can kind of figure out, well, which police chiefs, which actors are in the know about what aspect of the PSYOP complex. But it's definitely a small group manipulating the many, and the programmers are themselves programmed and compartmentalized. It's not a two-tier system where there's a big group of people in the know and a bunch of people not in the know. I don't know how it works. I've never been on it from the inside that high, but I mean, if you look at how military works with security clearances, it's not hard to keep secrets. There's this bad argument I often hear where no way they could have faked Apollo 11. Too many people were in on it. So I use the analogy of a movie, like a film being produced. There's a lot of people who are a part of it, but only the director and the main actors know what's happening in the final scene. It's just simple compartmentalization. And we're a very compartmentalized society in that regard. The thing is, at the bottom of the pyramid, it's a bunch of subjective belief systems, but they're all contained within certain parameters. So within this zone, you believe the following. It rests upon the edifice of our history. We have varying levels of agreement about far back, but like the last couple hundred years that have shaped today, we have a pretty solid consensus about what happened. And when we examine the influence of PSYOPs in the news, even in the last 30, 40, 50 years or 60 years since the JFK assassination, just look at that period of time, you can say with confidence that our history is lies agreed upon. That it represents a perspective that serves the power elite who maintain a disparity of knowledge and keep us in relative darkness because we're not let in on how contrived our worldview is. And this is the real conspiracy that the conspiracy theorists all miss. They're chasing Epstein files and JFK and reptilians and all kinds of things, but they can't figure out that all these red pills, all these various conspiracies, that's just a universe of ideas. And it's within the closed system. But as long as you are chasing these various red herrings, you're not seeing that the purpose to all the conspiracies is to plug you into the bigger system. The only real conspiracy is this: that the manufactured version of reality given to us through fake news, influenced by psyops, reinforced by the entertainment programming, this manufactured version of things that we consensusly accept, which is it just gets a pass. I mean, if you look back decades, none of the fake news gets called out. It gets integrated into our worldview. All of your textbooks are going to reflect the mainstream version of events, no matter what we find that contradicts it. So knowing this, you can say confidently that the only real conspiracy is that they are not only writing history in advance, but implementing it on TV in front of our faces. I mean, look at the fake Trump shooting and the January 6th thing. Like, Trump voters are the most deceived people on earth. And even the people who have the experience and the insight to maybe deconstruct that event, if they're not really aware of psyops in general, they can't make sense of it. They're like, well, the fireman died and the shooter died. No, for such an event to have taken place, it necessarily would have involved the collusion of media, left, right, the Secret Service, and a number of people behind them, and all of the AP reporters. So this conspiracy is so big they can't see it. That's why I call it the forest of fakery. The truthers walk around and they're guided to certain trees, and they're told, hey, this tree's fake. And then they spend years just barking up that tree. And the people directing them don't point out that every tree is fake. So the forest of fakery is just this allegory I wrote to describe how truthers are not able to get the big picture, which is why their focus is so diverse and diluted. What's up, P-Trip? Lord Laney says, even the fact in today's society the word skeptic has been demonized as a derogatory term, they do not want people to like or teach suspending judgment. Well, because the media ecosystem is based on clickbait and engagement bait, triggering people, and emotional engagement. And if you're not plugged in, they're not getting anything out of you. I mean, I remember World War III, which we all survived. The war with Iran. When was that? Like a few weeks ago? Nobody remembers. But when it was happening, just like in Top Gun 2, I had relatives and I knew other people that were just worried to death about fallout, nukes. Are we going to die? Are we a target? But now nobody's talking about that. And I said at the time, if you believe headlines, you're programmed. That's why I call it mind aids. There's no mental immune system in some people. But there's a cure for it. We have Mind War inoculation, infinite plane radio. We give it out for free. So if you stay 3 days behind the news cycle, when you confront a story, you'll have more information. The truther bait and misdirections will have been filtered out. And the purpose of the psyop, if it be such, would have been revealed by then. I mean, generally it's instantaneously. If you look at the uniform response left and the uniform response on the right, that tells you the utility of that particular fake event. But yeah, this is too big of a conspiracy for the conspiracy theorists to understand or to grasp. It's the metascript. And again, the metascript is the only provable conspiracy. It's demonstrated by the fact that decades of influence operations and psyops are unchecked, uncorrected, and they are the dominant influences in the media ecosystem. So we're not saying everything's fake, but we're saying that the small percentage that is fake takes up all the air. Always has, and it's by design. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's not an anomaly, it is the standard operating procedure. Lean Dion says, concurrently, there's a movie on Amazon about CIA agents in Iran that destroy underground nuclear sites and then yep, similar. You know, last year, and my indicator for whether something's going to be relevant from a programming perspective is it being force memed? And Canary Black was like the #1 on Amazon last year. So I watched it. I think the main character is that lady from some vampire and werewolf series called Underworld. But so in Canary Black, it's about this Putin-looking guy who releases a, quote, digital nuke, blacks out the world, holds everybody hostage. More recently, Zero Day had a similar theme. There's been a lot of blackout stuff. And so, again, just pointing it out, Top Gun clearly was produced long before the Iran thing. So even if you are in complete denial that there's intentionality behind predictive programming in general, or that it's synchronized, that it's entrained the way I'm saying it is, you have to admit it's a little fishy that a popular movie like Top Gun would be released concurrent to a very unpopular move, as though to justify a maverick move, going against the system and winning at the end. It's just a big PR stunt. And if you haven't seen Top Gun 2, pretty much every character has some kind of sun god association. It's weirdly associated with sun worship, which makes sense when you understand the role of Tom Cruise and the Scientology mystery school. It pretends to be a religion, a sci-fi religion, but ultimately it's just a facade. And Tom Cruise plays a very symbolic role, because the sun god's always a hero, a sacrificial hero, the hanging man. But the Top Gun 2, if you go through it, you'll see it. 33 rounds left, 33 years after the first one, 33 million opening weekend. Main character's name is like Phoenix, Christ symbol. Rooster, Christ symbol. Hangman, very Christ-like. The guy who calls himself the savior in the movie. He says, I'm good, I'm a savior, like he's saying he's God. The actor who played Hangman happened to be 33 at the time. So you find this consistent code. It's undeniable. On a movie that is also used as a influence operation. But anyway, this code stuff is kind of tricky. I have a couple of ideas of why I think it exists. First of all, if it's esoteric, it's not meant for the masses to really notice or interpret. So if it's esoteric, it means that there's a level for those who have been given an interpretation in advance. You have the key. You have the codex. So if I were to analyze this from that perspective, it would look to me like what they're doing is, just like with every other aspect of our worldview, they're replacing things from the old world and upgrading it, updating it. So we get these sun god savior archetypes in our movies because they're replacing Jesus. Superman was 33. The movie opens up. He's like, 3 decades, 3 years, and 3 months. I lost my first fight, and he hits the ground. This sun god savior motif, and when he needs his powers back, he's got to fly up to the sun. So why is this? Well, it's because clearly, you can speculate as to whether or not the elite, worship the sun, worship these old religions, whatever. But the fact of it is, they've updated our old religious systems and they present it to us in the movie screens. They give us these new mythologies, but they're using the same archetypes for a reason. Like the flood myth of Noah. Why do we have this National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration called NOAA that's always on Twitter? NOAA's warning us of a flood if we don't cut back on our carbon footprints. It's like, why are they so biblical about it? It's because they're updating the paradigm. It's a new iteration. New world order is the old world order. In fact, I found this interesting article. I'll have to go back and I'll do a video on this. These Russian rocket pioneers, pre-NASA, who talked about, in the book Red Star, they write about this perfect communist base on Mars. But they talked about cosmism and the idea of panpsychism, an intelligent universe. And in these different discussions, there was this talk about space as kind of more or less like what I'm saying, a replacement for heaven. That they're finding scientific replacements for religious things, like aliens. These are angels for the atheists. They serve all the same functions. The iconography aligns. It's syncretism. So the angels now are dressed up with science fiction, but they have all the same components. You know, you've got they come down in light, rapture you. They create some hybrids. There's some bad ones. But ultimately they're good, and if we wreck things, they might all come down and save us. And they're intermediaries. They represent us perfected. What's up, we? Lightning's getting closer. And more frequent. Explains the dog. It's like, I know some dogs are just terrified of lightning. I know another dog, like a little Chihuahua mix thing, that runs out and barks at it, barks at the thunder. But some dogs are just total babies about it. Lean Dion mentioned a movie. I want to see it, if you got the name of it. Now, a great example of concurrent programming was Mountainhead, where the main character is basically Elon Musk. And it's about generative AI wreaking havoc, about the nation going into some kind of, the world going into riots. Well, what happened after Mountainhead came out? The generative AI was in fact used to inflate the apparent conflict between Iran and Israel, for one. And then you had the riots kicking off in LA, which I think are largely manufactured events. And then the end of the week you had No Kings, where you had protests in thousands of cities. And when you look at this movie Mountainhead, they're not even hiding it. Obviously it's a parody and it's a satire, I get it. It's not hard to make a parody of an Elon Musk. However, the timing of it is what is highly significant here. So if you wanted to know what was going on in the news, you could watch Netflix. I say that all the time. So let's say you didn't watch the news. And you're like, oh, what's new on Netflix? Oh, look, Mountainhead looks cool. So you watch that and you're like, hey, it's like Elon Musk triggering a meltdown in the world with social media, not caring, and everything's just in a state of chaos. Then you turn on the news and Los Angeles is on fire and there's nationwide protests being organized against Trump. So last night we were talking about the Hulk stuff. The Hulk, and I wrote articles about this last year, earlier this year, about the connections between Mark Ruffalo, Harrison Ford, both playing Hulks, Green Hulk, Red Hulk, Hulk Hogan, and Donald Trump, and the assassination theme. And this is not evidence of simulation. This is evidence of intelligent planning by man to manipulate man. So I just cited a couple of things here. The Hulk characters, Hulk Hogan. So Hulk Hogan, RNC, spoke about Trump getting shot. But previous to that, on July 13th, when Trump was shot in Butler, like right before that, the day before, Captain America trailer comes out. And Harrison Ford, who plays the Red Hulk in the movie, gets shot at while he's at the podium. And because of the timing of the release, Marvel changed the trailer because they said, wow, this just happened. What a coincidence. Let's delete it. The movie Mickey 17 has Mark Ruffalo, who plays a Hulk. But in this movie, he plays a Donald Trump-like character. So you have a Hulk playing a Trump character. In Mickey 17, a Luigi-esque character shoots him, like an assassination attempt. And this is after he talks about colonizing an all-white planet. He's basically Trump. And the bullet grazes his cheek, leaving him bleeding, and he gets up and he poses for the cameras, just like Trump did in Butler. The problem is, the movie was filmed 2 years before Butler. So you see what I mean? The concurrent releasing of these things. And then it gets deeper, because like, wait, Mark Ruffalo was born on JFK's death day. And Harrison Ford was born on 7/13. So both these actors, both playing Hulks, both getting shot in a movie concurrent with Trump getting shot, have birthdays directly connected to the dates of presidents being shot. And this is just scratching the surface. There's another layer to this thing with these Trump proxies in movies. I mean, the fact that Harrison Ford was born on 7/13 is significant for a few reasons. It's shot in a Ford theater. But I think you could even add to it, there's quite a few other things in here that build onto it. But my main point here is that we're talking about the coordinated releases of essentially propaganda films. That your entertainment has been hijacked for the purposes of propaganda. Nothing shocking there. And the more we examine it, the more these coincidences cease to be, quote, mind-blowing and just become parts of a structure that we were accustomed to discerning here. There is a structure to these psyops. There is a pattern. And the patterns aren't just randomly cherry-picked things. We're talking about precision, especially with the drills. Like I shouldn't be able to say, hey, look, an airplane hit a helicopter. It's probably happening during a drill. Like, that shouldn't be happening. We had a caller say, well, there were some drills in the area. They were drilling for rescuing people from the water. But then later, and this is why you can't rush to judgment, a few days later it came out, yeah, they were actually doing a continuity of government drill for evacuating VIPs in case of a nuclear incident. So you're telling me that a helicopter doing an evacuation drill gets in an accident. And then the immediate response is, this was caused by Trump and Musk because they canceled the FAA and they cut down on the number of air traffic control. And the right wing says, no, it's because they had a female pilot. DEI. When the Trump assassination attempt happened in Butler, the right said, they said it's DEI because they had female Secret Service, or it was the result of Biden hiring incompetent people in order to get him killed. I mean, they had all these theories. But when people have these theories for why it happened, they bypass the research to determine whether it actually happened. So they sell you on these narratives so you assume the story's true. It's like a used car salesman getting you to debate whether you want one color or another, or talking about features. Yeah, they assume the sale. Well, I'm not buying the story. I'm not going into the weeds and trying to figure out why it happened until I figured out, has it even happened? Is it even plausible? So many people are caught up in whodunits instead of a what is it. And you'll notice the people who think it's a whodunit, like who did it, who's at the top, they don't know what the hell it is. It's like, it does no good to speculate on who did it if you don't know what it is. Meaning, if you think it's 100% real, do you think it's a mix? Do you know that history has been completely written in advance, that we're living in a false Truman Show paradigm? And people love rumors. So much is just built on a rumor. And I'm not agitated or mad about this stuff. I think this just might be human nature. You know, how we share stories. Like, there's something going on here, though, collectively. Like NASA says, there might be an asteroid that might be aliens, and it might be coming to kill us in November. Simple headline. Then you got a bunch of content creators and believers in UFOs suddenly launching into, they're gonna kill us, or it's coming, it's gonna be fake. They get back into it. And they all forget that 2 months ago, the Pentagon admitted that they made up all the UFO stuff. But lack of evidence has no effect on them because they say, oh, it's just a cover-up. And evidence of a cover-up is evidence of evidence. Same thing with the Epstein files. You got nothing with the Epstein files. Oh, it's because it's a cover-up. It just shows that the cover-uppers are more powerful than we say. Never let facts get in the way of a good narrative. That seems to be how people operate. And what I'm saying is, if you're suspending judgment and only assessing the facts, then you're not really running along with some emotionally driven narrative. And you'll find that a lot of these people who are chasing these scenarios have emotional attachments or religious fervor attached to it. Savior, these like missionaries You know, red pillars are missionaries. We got to save people. They ought to do that. Like, if you think your job is to wake people up and raise awareness, then team up with a buddy, get on a bike, get a nice shirt and tie and a bicycle helmet, and just go knock on doors and say, and have you heard the bad news about your 5G towers and the GMOs and the chemtrails? Have you heard about the deep state and the trafficked children and how their pineal glands are being harvested by the Democrats? It's a hard sell, but the Jehovah's Witnesses have been selling doom and gloom for a long time. You could probably do it. Because that's what you're doing. You're proselytizing, trying to wake people up. So you can mock these religious people for trying to wake people up to their paradigm. But that's exactly what we're talking about here, paradigm wars. Do you have to have a paradigm? Or can you exist in objective reality and separate the programming and the augmentations and the hyperstitions? And in my view, I think this is the case. I think that we are being guided to be believers, so we're open to being superstitious. And when I say believers, I mean that we're not given enough information to know for sure. By design. We're kept in the dark by design, so we're dependent upon the authority to fill us in. Skyfish says the JWs even have a magazine called Awake. Yeah, I'm actually inspired by a lot of the Jehovah's Witness literature, and I want to do a JW scale size version of The Insider, because I've been trying to get it published again, but there's just, the expenses really come from the shipping. And I found another solution through Canva. So the third issue of the IPS Insider might be a smaller magazine. And it may come out sooner than you think. A couple of people have sent me articles. Nothing's really stopping me. And this printer that I'm talking about, they do short runs. Plain Dakota says, it's hard because we're not done with the deprogram and we can't know what programming is remaining within us. Yeah, exactly. Because you see through the mainstream program and then you go into the alternative where all the gaps are filled in. But until you're made aware of fake news, as in simulated news events, because they're fabricating historic events, because they're fabricating our history, if you're not apprised of that, and they don't tell you about it, then you're not going to escape the program. You're just in alternative programming. But the deprogramming process to me is really just taking the subtractive route, eliminating that which can't be verified, and remaining as informed disbelievers and agnostic. So it's not about having the right beliefs. It's simply about taking the stance of, I'm just going to go with what I know. I'm in the real world. And I'll add to it what can be verified. It's a bullshit filter, which they take off of you as you move up through the grades of your education. I mean, you're given this framing of, well, this stuff is the designated fake, the designated conspiracies, and this stuff is real. But it's a philosophical thing. Like, we're not activists. This isn't political. We're not conspiracy theorists. This is about psychoepistemology, how we process information. And if you're processing information mainstream or alternative, you're a passive recipient. And you're passive because you have no direct access. So you're outsourcing. You're being informed by them, by your trusted sources. So that requires a bit of passivity where, okay, these things I can't be critical about. I can't really question these things. Believing headlines, for example, that's very passive. But to say, well, I don't know, I'm going to wait a few days and think about it, I'm going to parse the information, yeah, that would be the active mode. And so there really isn't a platform for the active analysis of media, as though we were anthropologists or something. It doesn't exist. That's why I describe what we're doing here as parallel media. You got main, alternative, and we are this third branch. And I don't say anti because the alternative media considers themselves to be anti. And I don't say anti because we're not opposed to it. We're simply maintaining a concurrent log of things as they happen. But we're not like trying to stop it. I'm not trying to wake people up like the red pillars or the Jehovah's Witnesses. My rule is, if I'm going to Normieville, I'm going to speak as though I'm in Normieville. If I'm in Woke Town, I can be, sensitive to the framing of the Woke Town residents. Like, I know how they see things. And then red pillars, like, I know how they talk. I know what the limits are of their knowledge with regard to any of these events. Like, when I engage with MAGAs on Twitter, I know that they believe that the deep state exists. They've accepted that as a core thing. What they may not know, because a lot of the MAGAs who are like kind of neocon mainstream, they don't know that deep state is all euphemism. Just like the people in Alex Jonestown, that are in Trutherville, they don't know that the red pill is a subset of an older conspiracy based upon blood libel. They've mainstreamed these core ideas through these various facets, but it gets people in the same box. These beliefs are clustered. And that's why I think it's important to note these things, because you can't accept any of these things in isolation. These are belief systems. What I'm promoting here is the rejection of belief systems. That's why I bring up atheism. We are rejecting the de facto state church, its myths and its belief systems and its God constructs. We have to be atheistic to its gods. It's just like a thought process thing, to recognize, okay, these things. Now, where does that leave us? Because some people are like, well, you can't not have a religion. Well, actually you can. So what happens absent a belief system? Is there a vacuum? Is there a God-shaped hole? No. The God construct was always a dark cloud, occulting your understanding about one thing or another. It never answered anything. There's no void when you get rid of it. So when you get rid of belief systems, there's not a void. Instead of false certainty, you're left with clarity. Maybe clarity about the limits of what you know, but it's better than running around with false beliefs that limit understanding, that de-incentivize curiosity, and give people a false sense of security. So outside of belief systems, what can you have instead? Well, that's the operating system. When we say auto-hoaxing, obviously it comes from the pejorative. You guys are just calling it all a hoax. You're auto-hoaxers. No, we're really not. We're recognizing patterns, and we're vindicated. But it doesn't really change anything other than the fact that you have less things to be stressed out about, and over time you begin to realize, hey, there's really nothing that the media can present me that is worth reacting to. Like, I'm not triggerable, but everybody else is. If they're in Normieville, and especially in Woketown, and this is also true with Trutherville, they're triggerable. They get thrown a little bit of hope. Oh, we're going to give you the Epstein files, the JFK files, the UFOs are coming. They all get triggered. Mass panics, and they all respond lockstep. This is why I think MK Ultra is real. The idea of MK Ultra, Mind Control Ultra, is that you're implanting all kinds of programs into somebody so that later they can be tapped into and they respond in a way that essentially makes them into puppets. And so I think of MK Ultra not as like Clockwork Orange, you're strapped down to a chair, forced to watch TV, and I think it's a little more subtle than that. That's why I use the word programmed like I do. I'm not programmed. Like when I hear about Iran's going to nuke us, I'm like, I hope they hit Seattle. Like I'm not even slightly bothered. World War III, Civil War, all these different scenarios. It's all about the threat. The threat of the thing is worse than the thing in the aggregate. Mango says, there's enough bad news, why make up more? Well, is there? I mean, it's really kind of a shift also. to subtract from your worldview the augmentations, not just the fake stuff, like maybe you don't believe in moon landings anymore. Like you have these things that you subtract from your worldview, but also subtract all the fake deaths, all the tragedies that weren't really tragedies. And when you subtract that, then you realize that the real targets of the mind war are the people who are emotionally engaged, who are crying at their TV screens, who are raged. Like rage bait is big today too. I did a bit of rage bait today. I do it for amusement on Twitter. Today I misidentified, what are those dogs called? These really large dogs. I think they're called something Corsi. It looks like a pit bull, but much bigger. Anyway, this guy had this dog and he couldn't control it. He was in Walmart and it had like this Hannibal Lecter mask on it. And I made some comment about it and I misidentified it as a pit bull. And then I doubled down and I said that people who carry these big scary dogs view them as fashion accessories. And it's literally the same thing as Paris Hilton with her little purse chihuahuas. And it's just a comment like that that means nothing, but it had like 30,000 hits and a lot of mad people. And then I respond to the mad people. This guy calls me the R word, and I'm like, well, you've got a cross in your username and you promote yourself as a Christian. You shouldn't be speaking like that. And then he doubles down on his bad language. And so what I'm seeing here is that it is so easy to loosh farm, to trigger people in a very targeted way. Marketers know this. This explains a lot about the world. Like these engineered events. It just shows how predictable we are. Plain Dakota says, I feel like duality is at the core of all the nonsense. It's a requirement. Yeah, it's the Hegelian dialectics. So the synthesis is where both sides agree. So left says the world's heating up, climate change is happening because of the right. The right being capitalism, free market, plundering the earth, using the fossil fuels because of profit motives override the safety of the world's inhabitants. So to the left, they condemn the right for screwing up the climate. The right says that's a hoax. We're not doing anything wrong. But at the same time, the right will say, but the climate is screwed up and a lot of bad things are happening, but that's because of the government. The secret government is using secret weather weapons. And they call it geoengineering. So the right then blames the left, who are, of course, worshippers of the government, for destroying the world. Left blames the right. So now both sides, you got the thesis, antithesis, and they have the synthesis where they both agree, well, we both agree the world's being destroyed, but we got to fight over who's doing it. We think they're doing it, they think we're doing it. But they both agree it's happening. So now it's a whodunit. It's a blame game. But I reject the premise that it's even happening. And it's like, it's robotic. You know, I encounter people who are, talking about chemtrails. And I'm like, okay, so you see these chemtrails, but climate change is not real, right? And like, they laugh. They'll say, of course not. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's like they can't see that they are a direct mirror of the other side. But the thing is, these mirrored positions are down the line for every major issue they take. You have toxic masculinity is balanced by feminism. And down the line, it's engineered. And so if somebody is taking a position on the anti-side of things, they're programmed. It's that simple. And I think it's important to be able to explain this. And that's why I'm putting out this third edition of the Auto Hoaxology and putting some charts, because if you're honest with yourself, and other people will be able to point this out, you will be able to identify whether or not you check these boxes. You will be able to see, well, am I in Normieville? Am I in Woketown? Am I in Trutherville? Am I on Q Street, hitting the Q pipe? Or am I off-world stage? And it's pretty cut and dry. And what we're doing here is we are segregating from the world stagers, the programmed, for a reason. Because the programmed do not have the right cognitive tools to assess what's happening. They're confused. And that's not, really being critical. It's just being honest. If they're convinced that the mainstream is lying and they automatically buy the alternative view, and they have no awareness about the source of that information or the hidden agenda behind it, they're no better off. Lost Age says, dog worship relates to mind control. Who's worshiping dogs? Like the Egyptians? Mind control is a fact. See, I think there's only one government. The existence of the metascript, which is demonstrated by the cumulative effect of fake news that is unchallenged and accepted ubiquitously, itself is evidence of mind control. Because all of our minds are steered by the same set of presuppositions. We all have the same frame, processed through the same black monolith. The screen, your iPhone screen, your smartphone screen, that's the black monolith that symbolizes the movie screen. And it symbolizes the merging, the silver screen, the lunar, the unconscious, the fantasy, the fiction, the merging of fake, the dream world, with real. The Space Odyssey was about our movement into the space age, and space age is really, I think, a reference to our inner space, because that's what ultimately they're about controlling. They're not taking us to outer space, but they're controlling our worldview and our inner space, our minds, the space between our ears. And I think that our collective immersion in media really underscores this, that we have merged with the monolith, and collectively our worldviews have been synchronized. And that's a big key. We've been synchronized. We're all on the same sheet. You may say, I don't watch the news. I'm not programmed. If you're not deprogrammed, which is an active posture, you are programmed. You can't just, you don't have to pay attention, but if you haven't gone through the process of separating from main and alternative media boxes and recognizing that it's in fact a simulation that you're meant to internalize, then no, you haven't really left. But as this think tank rolls forward, it's going to become clearer what I'm saying. People will recognize, okay, so that's the state church, and alternative is just another denomination, but they contain the same presuppositions. They keep us in these Hegelian dialectics, in this tug of war, left, right, designed to keep us consistently agitated and dependent upon their source of information, and that is the source from which our worldview is derived. And it's utterly a monopoly. There's a worldview monopoly. Isn't that what religions are? If everybody's a Scientologist, then they got a worldview monopoly. Everybody's a Mormon, they got a monopoly. So all these different religions would like to have a monopoly. None of them do. But then along comes mainstream media, synchronizes everybody outside of their religious boxes, and supplants and replaces their old myths with new ones. And then they perform miracles. When they put a man on the moon, that was a miracle that vindicated their entire paradigm, and it put it far above anything from these archaic worldviews. Iran has a space program. They used to throw rocks at obelisks. They used to burn obelisks because they saw it as an idol, earth worship, some pagan thing. But now they have the rocket going to space. Well, if you know the symbolism, the iconography here, the rocket is more obelisk than vehicle to take you to the moon. Obelisk, meaning shaft of bell, ball, earth god. Sun worship, the symbol of the resurrection and the ascension into heaven. So we've been given these new paradigm myths and new pageantry through entertainment and media. And beyond just our observations, you can find plenty of examples of people who are more or less in the know revealing what they know about this process. So yes, welcome to your one world religion. And that's why I brought up atheism. Because if you're going to debunk and deconstruct their worldview and their God constructs, you need to use the same cognitive tools. Even though it's not a spiritual God, their replacement gods are all held up by the same flawed argumentation. Yes, Lean Dion, the syringe is obelisky. The syringe, 100%, it's a religious implement. I mean, if you look at the split, in 2020, they divided us into saved and unsaved. What characterizes the saved is they believe the media and they take the injectable salvation, like a Eucharist, like a blood pact with the state. Like, in some covens, they actually use a needle and poke your finger when you sign your name. But the people who took it are obviously the ones who believe the media. But the anti-media, the people who get their conspiracy media, they rejected it. So they're unsaved. And they created this perfect split down the middle, where the people who sided with the state church were the good, and the other ones were the bad, the super spreaders. And then you can add on to it. You could consider the concept of sin no longer exists in this new paradigm. So they replaced the concept of sin with virus. And the virus serves the same functions. It's spread by the people who reject the church. It's carried by the people who reject the state church. And if you want to be saved from the sin, you got to go to church and take the salvation from the priesthood. And the carriers of the the devil, spread the sin, are the conspiracy theorists. So that you can see this perfect schism they created. And I think, and it was done for a few reasons, mainly I think, to globally introduce a new iteration of sin. So we got our new heaven in space, we got our new God constructs, like the nuke, global warming as an eschatology. We have all these new constructs that replace old ones, but the carbon footprint is something like original sin, wickedness, kind of built into us. So we're born wicked, and we have to work to overcome that to please Gaia. But the devil and the sin that has to do with your conscious decisions and whether you conform to the state or the church rather and get saved, yeah, that was reintroduced and accepted globally. And back to Lean Dion's point, the big obelisk known as the One World Trade Tower looks like a big syringe. And I think it perfectly exemplified something here. Because I looked at 3/11 as a new 9/11, but it was global. It's a big global psyop. But if you think about it, they synchronized the entire world in a paradigm-shifting psyop. They introduced a new devil, and everybody kneeled to it. They shut down all the churches. This is all highly symbolic. They showed who's boss. The one world religion is the dominant faith, and the thing is, it's so well disguised and couched in science that people don't see it for what it is. But when you listen to people's arguments for the things that they're supporting, you can kind of see, okay, these are just merely belief systems. And that's what we've been doing here. Because it matters that we have a shared consensus that rests upon a bunch of fakery that we can readily debunk. That fakery informs people. I don't live in the world where space junk is a real threat. I'm not wearing a helmet. I don't live in the world where kids are being mowed down by AR-15s. And I'm not a denialist. I just don't see the evidence for it. But there's plenty of agenda behind these things that we can discern. But you have to remember that these are things that people internalize. And so to be deprogrammed isn't just to turn off the TV. It's to examine the things that you accepted under bad pretenses and reject them. It's one of the reasons I'm doing the PSYOP trading cards. It's a compendium of fake things that we've noticed. So deprogramming is something of an ongoing process, but once you understand the basics and where you stand, you're not really programmable. Like, I could go camping for 3 months and not touch the news or watch anything on TV and come back, and I'm not going to be lost. I'm still going to know where I am. Meanwhile, everyone else will still be in their perpetual confusion that has been engineered for them. The black screen I mentioned, the phone, that's the wool they pulled over our eyes. That's the hoodwink, as they call it. The wool sack that they put over your head when you get initiated into the cult, and they pull it off symbolically to show that you've been shown the light. So unlike the people out there with the wool pulled over their eyes, living in the wilderness of darkness, you're here with us, and we got the light. That's the core of the Masonic initiation and other cults that have similar initiations, is separating you, the initiate, from the world of darkness. That's the big conspiracy. The enlightened keeping the endarkened in place with the wool over their eyes, or in this case, again, the black screen. What's up, Jennifer Reeves? Thanks for joining. All right, my phone's about to die. I got a couple more minutes here. I may be in Discord. So if you want to join us in Discord, we chat about a bunch of things. It's kind of open topics. And I entertain, not debates, but conversations with people who completely disagree with me, and vice versa. Because I firmly believe that the best way to refute somebody's argument is to understand it even better than they do if you can. Take the steelman approach. Never underestimate the opponent's ability to believe something that's false. You really have to uproot these things. But this has been a very enlightening year. It's like in the last year, we've made some steps forward, concurrent programming, really kind of discerning this metascript concept. But I think in the last few months, it's become increasingly clear to me that I think we're at a breaking point. The whole conspiracy realm is losing its credibility with this Epstein thing. I think people are getting tired of politics. I'm hoping there's a point here where we can have some constructive dialogue. But we're exposing the propagandists, the agents in place, and all they're doing is sowing malinformation in order to keep people in their box. It's just, this whole thing is so rigged. It's not even funny. But I don't get tired of it. This is entertainment for me. And I think it's also productive. Because what we're doing here really comes down to, philosophy. Thinking about how we think. It comes down to, sharpening our ability to know things. And then, I think what we're doing is ultimately productive and educational. And if I'm wrong about anything, prove me wrong. That's why I want to put out the 3rd edition of Auto Hoax 101. If you think I'm wrong with what I'm saying about history and our consensus version of things and how warped it is and the design behind it, feel free to try to refute it. And by the way, I had this idea, and if you are in Discord tonight, we'll probably discuss it. I have this idea for updating Newsbenders. Newsbenders, 1968. I'm updating it and producing a version of it with AI. And it would be Newsbenders 2025. And it would not be hard if you've seen the original, because what we're looking at in that movie, I think, is one of the clearest, probably unintentional reveals about how things work, but maybe not. The guy at the news agency who's letting the journalists in on the secret that they write the news in advance, that's Donald Pleasance, who plays the president during World War III in that Kurt Russell movie, Escape from New York. There's some fascinating overlaps with that character. He was a doctor, he was one of these Bond villains with the cut over his right eye, the inspiration for Dr. Evil. And then the other guy, the journalist who was being hired, was going to be the voice for Hell 9000. R. Cook says, 2020 seemed to slow everyone down, change routines. Life was just as fast before COVID, in my opinion. You know, before 2020, everything here was open 24/7. Even the post offices. I was a lot more productive. I could do all my work in the middle of the night. You could walk through a Walmart, get everything, go through the self-checkout, and never see a person, not even a clerk. But now, they're shutting down the self-checkouts because of thieves. And everything closes at like 9:30. Like nothing's open here. It's like one Taco Bell in the entire city. And that Whataburger. So that's your choice. It's like in that movie Demolition Man, where in the future you have the fast food wars and the only remaining restaurant is Taco Bell. And all the restaurants are called Taco Bell. But I'm not going to say 2020 was fun. It was disappointing. It was depressing. But it was enlightening. And I think it accelerated our think tanks thinking on a lot of things. Because we had real-time examples of mass mind control and how people are compartmentalized. And then I was witnessing, almost in a state of horror, how many people were relapsing back into the anti-position. Like, well, I understand it's all fake, but this thing is real. Let me become an anti-vax crusader. It's like, no, once you take that position, you're controlled opposition. You're in their box. You're lost to us. You got drafted into the mind war. You're a conscript. And now you're going to be pumped full of propaganda, and you're not going to be able to shut up about it for 5 years. Nothing but doom, gloom, and fear porn. You're a propaganda mule, and you're not getting paid for it. Like, it was a major disappointment, because that was a loss of time and energy just propagating fake bad news with no accountability. I have yet to see someone say, hey guys, I'm sorry for 2021 when I agreed with you that there wasn't a death spike, but I did say that everybody was going to be sterilized and there's no more babies. Like, nobody ever comes out and apologize. Like, look, if Seattle gets nuked and nukes are real and 8 million people die, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to say, hey guys, I'm sorry I said nukes were fake. Sorry I said stay in Seattle. Like, I will take accountability for that. But I don't see the antis on any of these things coming out and taking accountability for the service they rendered to Big Brother. Serving as essentially terrorists. I mean, you're spreading terror propaganda that makes you a terrorist. The anti-positions are all flawed, and these are no better than the pro positions. We have to remember, you have to be and anti-pro. You're not in the middle. There's no, well, I'm just in the middle, you know, just waiting to see which side is better. No, that's a position of weakness. And it's the main flaw is assuming that one of the sides is correct. No, it's not like that. Both sides are wrong and the middle is wrong. And there is a right and wrong. There are facts and there are lies and distortions, and we have to make these distinctions. They want us lost in a world of subjectivity where everybody has their own truth. No, it's true for me that nobody died, but for that guy, a lot of people died. No, we have an objective reality, and if you're not there, then you're confused, and again, that's where they want us by design. Objectivism, or being objective and clinging to facts, is probably going to be outlawed as some kind of a hateful ideology soon. You're a factist. Oh yeah, they're obsessed with facts. All right, we'll be back, likely in Discord. And if you're interested in the Newsbenders project, I'm rewriting it with the aim of introducing the Metascript by name. And again, I thought about finding a local group of people, because there's some theaters here, maybe rig something up where they end up performing it. But honestly, we'd be better off just upgrading to Google Gemini's premium version of their their video generative AI. It's fantastic. And I looked into it. And so I'm thinking we could produce the same film, same number of minutes, frame for frame, but with a rewrite, an upgrade, and have it released here before the end of the month. So if you're interested in that project, I'll be in Discord and I'll take your ideas. Thanks for joining. I'll be back in a bit.